Evening, everybody. Let's jump straight in. We're going to go from the beginning of Book 3, which is chapter 242, through to the end of chapter 247. That's the goal for tonight. It is about 22 pages, which is quite a lot. We're going to move especially fast through the beginning, and that's because this review group has already done that, but we are going to go through it again. The first chapter 242 is the laws of Kavod Shabbat, the honor of Shabbat. And the point that the point that the Shulchan Aruch makes, it puts people in a couple of categories. The first category is somebody who is already taking tzedakah, already reliant on other people. If somebody's taking tzedakah and reliant on other people, then they still need to make Shabbat extra special. And that's category number one, somebody who's already taking tzedakah. Category number two is somebody who is on the edge of taking tzedakah. They do not have one more rand to spend on anything. So then they should make Shabbat like a regular day. Don't buy special clothes, don't buy special food. Treat Shabbat like obviously, you keep Shabbat, but in terms of honoring Shabbat, you make Shabbat like a regular day rather than having to take tzedakah. So if you're already in the category of taking tzedakah, so then you should also ask for tzedakah for Shabbat. But if you haven't yet come into tzedakah, Shabbat should not push you from the category of not taking tzedakah to taking tzedakah. Does that make sense? And then the third person is somebody who has a little bit of leeway to play with their finances. And that is somebody who could, let's say, downgrade their Wednesday a little bit and upgrade their Shabbat a little bit. And that's then the correct thing to do. So you've got somebody who's already taking tzedakah, so take for Shabbat as well. You've got somebody who's not taking tzedakah, but there's no room to play around with finances, so rather don't take tzedakah. And then you've got somebody who has a little bit of room to play around, so rather diminish the other days and make Shabbat extra special. The next halakha is clean clothes. That you should have clean clothes on Shabbat, and in order to facilitate that, Ezra said that you should do your laundry on Thursday. So you should make sure to do your laundry on Thursday so that you will have clothes for Shabbat. Don't do your laundry on Friday. Why not? God bless you. That's right. Might not end up with dry laundry for Shabbat. But if you do it on Thursday, then it's then you're gonna get it. Okay, so now today, if you do it by Wednesday, I assume that's also fine. It's just the point is don't leave your Shabbat laundry later than Thursday. That's how I understand the Takanat Ezra's rule is don't leave your Shabbat laundry later than Thursday, so that we know you'll have nicer clothes on Shabbat. There is a custom, says the Ramor, to make challah for Shabbat. Well, he says to make dough, kadei shiur challah, a challah amount. How much is a challah amount? No, so that's the amount that you take, but how much you need? 2.5 kilos, they say, right? That's like six challahs, am I right? You take challah.
That's a lot,
Yeah, so it's a lot. So he says the custom is, yes,
it's about
4 to 6. Okay, I've ever said 6, so I can't leave that opinion out. 4 to 6 challahs, depending on size. So the custom isn't just making enough challah for Shabbos. So if you're making enough, because you could just make 2 for Shabbos, right? Or 3. So 4 to 6, and make this extra challah so that you will be able to take make the extra. It makes the extra amount of bread so that you be able to take challah and fulfill that mitzvah, or that zeicher mitzvah, that remembrance of the mitzvah of challah. And he says this is also a part of the honor of Shabbat. Part of the honor of Shabbat as well is if you're making the challah, then it's not pat akum or even pat paltar. Then it's going to be pat Yisrael. The Jew has made this challah. So even though normally, let's say during the week, you'll eat Albany bread, but for Shabbat you're having bread baked by a Jew. So that's like a higher level. So that's better. Then he says there's a custom of eating pies on Shabbat, and the idea is that a pie has got pastry on the top and the bottom, and then it's got the meat or the soya. He doesn't say soya, but presumably, right? Then he's got the the filling on the inside, and that reminds us of the man. Because the man came in the desert with the coating of dew below and the coating of dew above. And then the Ramah says, but people don't really do this. And the Mishnah Brura says, no, in our place people do this. And people were telling me not yesterday, 2 weeks ago, that in Israel they've seen this quite a lot. People having Pirogan would do it, yeah. So that would be good. Now that's the first... That's the first chapter of the honor of Shabbat. Now, chapter 243, and from here really till the end, is all going to be about having work done on Shabbat. Doing work on Shabbat, having work done on Shabbat. So there's a few principles over here, and let's start with the most basic one. The most basic one is there's no prohibition on your kalim, on your utensils, working on Shabbat. In other words, the fact that my olive press is being used on Shabbat is not problematic. The fact that the fax machine is on, or whatever, and the phone is ringing, that's not a problem on Shabbat, because I'm not commanded on shvitat kalim, on doing Shabbat for my utensils. That's not a problem. Does that make sense?
A stove.
Like a stove. I'm not commanded. Now, you might be commanded regarding cooking, but the fact that my stove is on or off, that's not problematic. For animals, we are commanded, yeah?
So, can you charge a device, over Shabbos?
So, if it's plugged in from before,
It'll overcharge.
you've plugged it in Erev Shabbos, you leave it there for 25 hours. So, yeah, the fact that it's charging is not your concern. Sorry? They might be. We're not talking about whether you can move them or whatever else. We're saying that things are happening, that my items are working on Shabbat is not a problem. Whether you're free, whether and how I can interact with them, it's really a different discussion. But the mere fact that they're working is not problematic at all. However, when it comes to animals, it's not the same. You are commanded regarding your animals, and your animals are not allowed to work on Shabbat. So if my animal is carrying things, in the public domain and all of that, that is problematic, right? So we live in Milnerton. I want to send a gift package to Roy, and I put a bottle of whiskey on the back of my dog. The dog knows which way to go. Give it a bit of a pat, and it goes out and delivers the whiskey to Roy. You're not allowed to do that.
It's gonna get stolen before
It's a vicious dog.
What about service dogs?
Service dogs for the blind? That's a good question. So you'll have to look at exactly what malacha is. What falls under malacha and what doesn't fall under malacha. But your animals are not allowed to do malacha. Now, in an agricultural society, it's obviously much clearer, because the animals working meant the cow, the bull plowing the land and that kind of thing, threshing or whatever.
But is your dog allowed to carry a bone?
Yeah.
I mean, my cats carry things all the time. Maybe they can get a gun on the
Yes.
animals.
Good question. So, yeah, it's a good question. We'll come to all of those. Yes, this isn't really the focus point for Shvitat Bahema. That's what it's called. This concept is called Shvitat Bahema. That's what we say that every Shabbos, every Shabbos day for Kiddush, right? Lo taseh kol melacha, ata vincha vitecha, avdecha v'amatcha, uvemtecha. No malacha can be done by including your animal. So that's part of it, that the animal doesn't do malacha on Shabbat. And now again, exactly what the parameters are, we'll come to that. But that's the principle, that the animal doesn't do malacha. And where that's going to come in is you have somebody who isn't Jewish, says, I want to rent your cow over Shabbat. So basically the answer is no. He wants to rent the cow to work his field. Basically the answer is no. Because if it's my cow, then that's a problem. If he wants to rent my cell phone over Shabbos, that's not an issue. Because it doesn't matter if my cell phone is being used on Shabbos. My car, better example. It doesn't matter that my car is being driven on Shabbos. But so that we could look at.
If he was what's a shoel or Brura?
Yes, we're going to deal with the different. We're going to deal with the different parameters of it, because good. That's going to be a third issue that we're going to deal with. So issue number one, which is shvitat kalim. Is there a problem with your car driving? No, that's not a problem. Issue number two, shvitat bahema. Is there a problem with your animal working? Yes, that is a problem. Issue number three is marit ayin, what Mendel mentioned. So now that's going to come up many times. Even if what you're doing is actually fine, does it look fine? So I've got a branded truck, right? Thurgood's Electrical Supplies. And I always drive around in my electrical supplies truck. And now my non-Jewish friend Chris wants to rent that truck over Shabbos because he wants to, move things back and forth. So maybe that would be problematic because of Marid Ayin. Everyone sees Thurgood's electrical truck driving around. That could be problematic. So that's a case we're going to look at many times. This comes up in this section of Shabbat of Marid Ayin. Does it look like you're violating it in some way?
So also, I just want to know, this might not be so, but like, I thought you learned that you can't only rent for Shabbos, you have to like do Friday, Shabbos and Sunday.
Good, yeah. This is issue number 4. Issue number 4 is schar Shabbat, earning money on Shabbat. So that's a separate one, which is you're not allowed to earn money from Shabbat. So the fact that even though it doesn't say Thurgood Electrical Supplies, it's a fairly nondescript car that Chris wants to rent from me. Nobody would ever think that this is my car. So Chris rents the car. He's going to be driving it around or whatever else. But he says, I arrange with him, I give him the keys on Friday. Right? He's going to pick it up Shabbos morning, drive it around, drop it back off Shabbos afternoon, drop off the keys, and he's going to pay me money for it. So that's the problem there is schar Shabbat, being paid for Shabbat. You generally can't earn money on Shabbat.
What do you mean generally?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to explain now.
It's like children's service.
Yeah. Okay, so there what you do is you're paying for preparation or this or that. But this is the great loophole for schar Shabbat is like this. It's what's called havla'ah. Havla'ah literally means swallowed, absorbed. That fee of schar Shabbat can be absorbed very easily. Very easily. What do I mean by very easily? I say to this guy, Chris, you got to pay me. I can't really charge you for renting the car on Shabbat, but you got to pay me for petrol. And petrol's, 700 Rand a day. You can charge, and this is in the halakha, this is not like outside of the halakha. You can charge as long as you put it together with something else, some kind of consumables, or as you said, Yoda, starting from Friday. You can rent the car from 1 minute before Shabbos, until going into Shabbos day. And then I'm charging you, once I'm charging you for Erev Shabbos as well, then Shabbos Erev. Because we'll get to that in detail. I'm really just sketching out the ideas here.
Harama.
But that's schar Shabbat. Yes, you're allowed to do harama. You're allowed to do trickery when it comes to schar Shabbat. They speak about that when it comes to hotels and that kind of thing. It's all the same kind of things coming because you got a cleaning bill and you got a this and a that. So the only problem with schar Shabbat is when it's only schar Shabbat. So that is going to be an issue, but it's an issue which is circumventable in most situations we'll get to. So those are the first 4 points. Yes.
You can't really give the car 1 minute before Shabbos because then obviously he's going to use it on Shabbos.
Okay, so now, but again, what's the problem with him using on Shabbos? There's no problem of it's shvitat kalim. I'm not commanded. I don't have to have my car running sitting idle on Shabbat. My car's not Jewish.
But neither is your ox.
So my ox is a shtickle Jewish, right?
And a God.
That's the idea. Same.
God.
Yeah.
And what about if you own a small business, it's growing, nobody knows about it, and you want to go make samples, so you hire a non-Jew to go sell samples for you at a non-Jewish shop on Shabbos. We'll give it up.
Okay. So now we got a few more issues. So we've got the first 4. You happy with the first 4? And we'll see more cases of these playing out. But I think it's good to kind of start with the principles. The next one is problem number 5 or issue number 5 is having things done on your behalf. Telling this non-Jewish person to go and do malacha. Right? Because we read the Torah saying, Lo yeyaseh malacha, no malacha may be done. I'm not allowed to create malacha on Shabbat, right? To get it going. So the fact that I'm now saying to this non-Jewish person, please go out and do malacha for me on Shabbat, that's very problematic. So that's issue number 5, right? Lo yaseh malacha, malacha can't be done. If he's doing it for me, that's going to be an issue. So what we want to know is he doing it for me or is he doing it for himself? And that's going to depend primarily on the payment structure. So when we come back to Yo's question, or all of these kinds of questions, so what is the payment structure that's set up? If I'm hiring Chris and I say, Chris, I want you to work for me 7 days a week and I'll pay you 1,000 Rand a day.
Can't do that.
So it's going to be problematic because the work we're talking about Shabbos, non-Shabbos kind of work, talking about melacha. So for 6 days a week, that's absolutely fine. But now I'm paying him 1,000 rand to work on Shabbos. He's working for me on Shabbos. That's no good. But if I say to him, I will pay you based on the work that you do. If you do a lot of work, for every he's cutting stone in my quarry. For every stone that you produce, right, I'll give you 100 rand. And generally, a person can do 70 stones over the course of a week.
6 days.
So
You've got to be able to do it over 6 days, though.
So I don't set a target for him. And I say, however many stones you make, that's what you'll be paid for, right? You make 1 stone, you get 100 rand. You make 10 stones, you get 1,000 rand. So he goes out and he does as many stones as he wants. Now, even if he's working on Shabbat, he's not working on Shabbat because I told him to work on Shabbat. He's working on Shabbat because he's choosing to make money this way. Right? So that's going to be a key difference. That's issue number 5 of recruiting somebody else to do melacha for you.
But just, I want to know, isn't that the problem with going into a shop and Shabbos in Maris Iron? Because it looks like you're buying something.
But
So
it's not-
with
but
this
it's not-
person, all he's doing is he's staying. He's not going to be in his Maris Iron because he's not Jewish. So surely you could pay him for working on Shabbos. Because
No, 'cause
then
those
you
are-
get something out of working on
Well, those are 2 different issues, right? Number 3 is marit ayin. Number 5 is getting somebody to do melacha for you. So even if there's no marit ayin, that's going to be an issue, getting somebody to do melacha for you. And even if there's no getting somebody to work for you, but there's marit ayin, that's also going to be a problem. That's what we're going to see in a minute.
Maris Iron for a non-Jew.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
If you have, like in my place, I've got a security guard in the thing, and
Yes.
it's Shabbat. Am I
Yes.
like to regularly? Please, like, when I come home, will you please open the?
It's a good question, but that's a different
different
issue.
one.
That's a different issue.
Speaking about the thing with the quarry, how possible does it have to be? Like, if you say, I'm hiring you from 1 minute before Shabbos to 1 minute after Shabbos,
You're not
and
allowed to do that.
it can't be impossible.
Because then you're forced
Yeah,
to
that's
do
annoying.
extra days.
Does it have to be possible that he could
Yes.
actually get one?
Yes, because otherwise you're hiring. If I'm hiring him for a job which he can only do on Shabbos, then I'm hiring him for Shabbos.
Even if you say only per block, and you say he doesn't have to do...
Oh, so that might be that maybe he doesn't. So he can choose not to do any. But okay, we'll see. We'll get there. Okay. So now chapter 243. We'll go through the Shulchan Aruch quite quickly with selected Mishna Bruras. As you know, my way is a little different to the testing way. The testing way, they love the details, and I like to focus more on the general principles. So I'm not promising we'll get everything that's in the test, but that's what you got the other 6 days of the week for, to spend time on. So what he says is, if you want to rent out your bathhouse to someone who's not Jewish, for him to use that bathhouse on Shabbat. So it's Thurgood's bathhouse. And this non-Jewish guy says, I want to pay you 1,000 rand. And then I will use the bathhouse and take in everything that comes through. So that's a little bit like him saying, I'm going to rent your car. And I will pay you 1,000 rand for the car. And then I'll drive around and do deliveries and earn money on those deliveries. In principle, that should be fine. Am I getting him to do work? No. Is there a problem that my car or my bathhouse is working on Shabbat? No. The only problem that comes in is, so even Schar Shabbos we can work out, because whether you work out with consumables or the time period or whatever else.
But with the bathhouse, isn't it Marisol?
Bathhouse maritime, why? Because it's called Thurgood's bathhouse. And people can see that it's in operation. And there's the other point that he brings in. The usual way that a bathhouse operates is that I own it and I employ people. See, here it's different. Here, he's running it over Shabbos. Normally, the bathhouse is operated by the owners. Here, it's being operated, the owners or their employees. So people will think that he's my employee and that I own it over Shabbos. Whereas really, he's like bought it for Shabbos, but it doesn't look like that because it's called Thurgood's bathhouse. Yeah. So, however, when it comes to a field, this is an acceptable option. He can say, I want to rent out your field for whatever, a month, a week, a year, and work on it on Shabbos, because he's rented out the field. He's paid me a flat rate. Whatever profit, he gets the profit. And it's not Maridayan, because when people see him working on the field, they don't think that he's my employee. They think that he's made this deal. So the Marit Ein is going to depend on what will people generally assume. How do these things usually work? So I'll give you another example that we'll see when it comes to building a house and contracting, for example. So I've got builders building my property on Shabbos. Now, the agreement I made with them was that they have a job to do. I contract what the job is, and I'm paying them based on the job. I'm not paying them by the hour. So in theory, they can work whenever they want to work. The question is, will that be married? And do builders usually work that way? Do builders usually charge by the day, or do they usually charge by the job? So I asked my brother-in-law, who's in construction, and he says it's like 50-50. Yeah, he says there are a lot that he says he charges by the job, and there are a lot that charge by the job. There are also a lot that charge by the day. He said he believes it's more ethical to charge by the job, but that's another discussion. Yes, Sam. Okay.
Wait, but if it is 50-50, then which one do you go?
Don't know.
Whichever one you
It's
want.
written in the contract. It's in the contract.
Yeah, but he's saying, would it be married iron? He's asking, would it be married iron?
Yeah.
Would it be married iron? So we'll get to building the house as well in a little while. Okay. Now, the next thing he says is, even with this married iron problem, we can get around it if it's made publicized, if it's made a public thing. I mean, he says if it's done year after year, and people know that this is being rented out, not being run by me, with my staff.
But there was a point then when it was Maranatha.
Yeah, so a fairly practical way would be that's my suggestion. A fairly practical way, it seems, I'm not giving this as practical halachic advice, I'm just saying, fairly practical way it seems would be to put up a sign saying, Thurgood's Bathhouse, operated by, Chris, whatever, think of a very non-Jewish sounding name, right? That operated by Chris, so and so, and then we know that that's not a problem. That he's actually kind of taken control of this. Good. Next one, chapter 244. So the next one is getting him to do a job. So that was the first one was when it comes to running the bathhouse. Again, if he's my employee, then that's a problem because I'm getting him to do the work. But when it comes to but if he has rented it from me and he's working for himself, then that's not such an issue. Now the next one is that I'm giving him a job to do. He's the tailor or whatever else. So. Again, this depends. Am I paying him by the job or am I paying him by the hour? So if I'm going to be paying him by the hour over Shabbos, obviously that's problematic. But even if I'm paying him by the job, but people can see that he's doing it for me, then that's also an issue because then again it looks like he was hired. So when it comes to something like builders, this could be problematic, and that's the example. I'm having renovations done in my home, and I'm saying that we've made the agreement that they're charging by the job, which in theory is now fine. They've quoted me on the work. I've accepted the quote for the work, and whether they finish it in a week or whether they finish it in a month is totally up to them. And they now come in and they want to work on Shabbat. So that's problematic because people may think that I'm paying them by the day and that therefore I've hired them to work on Shabbat. One of the ways around this Marit Ayin is if it's outside of the kind of inhabited area, off the beaten track. If it's way outside of town where people don't ever go and these guys choose to work on Shabbat, that's going to be fine. That's not going to be a problem. It's only an issue if they're working in the area where other people might see.
Does it have to be Jews around? What happens if there are people but then none of them are Jewish?
Good. So the Ramah asked that question. He says, even if you live amongst non-Jews, you have to be concerned for the Jews who will come to visit. So even in Pofaris Fortain, once in a while, a Jew comes through for Shabbos. So this only applies to an area where nobody's around. But if there are non-Jews around, so it could be that the Jews are around also. Yeah. Let's just go a bit further. So now he says. Let me just see this next point. Yeah. Now, what happens? Oh, the next point is, let's say I never clarified this with them. So really, what I should be doing in these situations, especially when you're going to have an issue of marit ayin or whatever else, what I should do is contract with them from the beginning that they can't work on Shabbat. That's what should be made clear. They can't work on Shabbat. So I'm paying them for the job, but they must work 6 days a week, not 7 days a week, not Shabbat. Now, what if I never made that clear to them, and they come in to work on Shabbat? So I never made that clear. Now they come in. I say, look, sorry guys, you can't work today. They said, but we've already, that's our schedule and whatever else. So then I've got to pay the penalty. For putting them out and whatever else and changing the deal. But I can't say, oh well, I forgot to do it, so therefore we'll just make the new agreement for now. No, I've got to now put right what I put wrong, and if that's what if it means that I have to pay a price for it, then that's exactly what we do. What happens if we did this in a prohibited way? Now, there's discussion in the Mishna Brura whether prohibited means that I actually hired him for Shabbat, or just I gave him the job and I let him work on Shabbat. In other words, was the problem that I actually got him to work on Shabbat, or was the problem that I allowed the marit ayin of it looked like he was working on Shabbat? So the Mishnah Brura wants to say we're speaking about a case where it looks like he was working on Shabbat. Yeah. So again, as he says to me, I'll build you this house for R1,000,000. I say, fine, you got 3 months, so I'll do it in 3 months. Make the agreement, everything. Then he comes and he starts working on Shabbos. I say, oh man, I forgot to make the arrangement with him. It's fine. Just let him carry on. Now he carries on and he's built the house. What is the law of that house?
Can't go in.
Yes, correct. Well, it's not that you can't go in. The Shulchan Aruch says, Nachon lehachmir shelo yekanzu bo. It is appropriate to be careful, to be strict, that you don't enter that house. So he doesn't say it's forbidden. It's not forbidden to go in. It's permissible to still use that house, but it's inappropriate. It's not nachon. This was a house that was built not correctly. It's built bli tzedek, right, without righteousness. So a house is built without righteousness. It shouldn't be that you live in that house. After all, we're talking about a place that you're going to be living in. What if somebody, built it for you? In other words, you didn't make the arrangement, right? Your father-in-law built the house for you, and he had these guys building on Shabbos. Is it correct then for you to go in? Because after all, it wasn't your fault? No. No Jew should live in this house. What you can do is you can sell it. You can sell it to somebody who's not Jewish. Again, it's not forbidden, but it's interesting because Shulchan Aruch just says nachon lahachmir. It is correct to be strict. But the when it comes to selling it, the Mishnah Brura says you're allowed to sell it. That's a strange one, mutar. But you're allowed to live in it also. Nobody ever said asur. But I guess what he's saying is there's no even chumrah, there's no even stringency to not sell it. Nobody says you have to let it go to ruin.
So you are going to sell it, but can you still use the money?
Yes.
If you weren't allowed to stay in it,
Can you get
can you
benefit
still
from profit?
Yes.
benefit?
Yes, you can.
Can
Yes, you can.
you buy a house that's been built and that was built on Shabbos?
That's a good question. So the fact that he says you should sell it to a non-Jew, that implies to me that you should not buy such a
Let's
house.
say the non-Jews built the house. So can you buy a house
And how
built
would you
on
know
Shabbos
that?
from the non-Jew?
Who were they employed by a Jew?
No, they weren't employed.
They do both themselves. So then there's been no wrongdoing. See, the problem is when a Jew commissions the work done, and either he got them to work on Shabbos, that's an Aveira, or it looked like he got them to work on Shabbos, that's also an Aveira of marit ayin. So then the house was built through an Aveira. But if Buddhist monks built a house, no Aveira and Buddhist monks building a house, so why can't you... What's the Avodah Zarah? They're building. What they do in the temple is not necessarily got to do with what they're doing in building the house.
Can you
Could you
demolish the house
say
and rebuild
it's
them?
specifically on the people involved in the initial building process, but if a Jew sells to a non-Jew, you can buy from that non-Jew? or in the case that a Jew chose to live in that house, should other Jews avoid like going to that person?
Yeah. Okay, it's two questions. So the first question is this taint removed after the initial sale or whatever else? I don't know. Take a look in the commentary, see what they say. And number two, does this apply even to entering the house or only living in the house? I also don't know, but I would think it means don't live in the house. I don't think it means, because remember, it's all a chumrah. I think we've always got to come back to that. This is not the basic halakha. I think let's go further. We could discuss a lot of the details, but then we're going to miss out. We only got 20 more minutes, and we've got a lot more still to cover. So I'm not going to take those questions. Okay. The next one is, what if you would hire somebody who's not Jewish to make you a piece of clothing or something like that? So then he can do it on Shabbat. Because you've paid him for the job, he can do it whenever he wants. And this is the kind of thing that we know that people pay for a job, not pay for somebody's time. Then they have, and you obviously need to make sure that that's the arrangement that you did. Okay. Then some want to say, but you have them on retainer. What happens if you've hired somebody who isn't Jewish around to do odd jobs, to do whatever needs doing? So that can create problems. That can create problems when you now say to him, and do this, and he's going to do that on Shabbos, and do the other thing, and that's going to do that on Shabbos. So it's better to work on this job by job basis. But obviously, when practical questions come up, a lot of these can change in the details. Okay, now they had a way of collecting taxes in those days. The way the taxes would work, you didn't have a central revenue service. You had what's called tax farming. What tax farming would mean is like this. The government would approach Jared Myers, or Jared would approach the government. And he would say, I would like to collect all the taxes for Cape Town. So they say, fine, we need R1 billion this month. So Jared says, great, I will pay you 950 million now. I'll take in the billion. I'll do all the hard work, right? You pay me 50 million for my travel, and I'll take in the R1 billion. That was the way that it used to do, that they used to work it. So then Jared would go around and he'd have his team, right? So he'd get 9 people, and he'd pay each of them 100 million rand, or whatever it would be, and he'd get them to divide up the districts and go around. Now, Jared hires somebody who isn't Jewish to go around and collect tax on Shabbat. So what's the halacha with that?
No problem.
So it depends again how he structures it. If he says, I'll pay you 100 rand a day and part of that is Shabbos, then that's going to be a problem. But if he says, for every 1,000 rand you collect in tax, right, I'll give you 50 rand, then that is acceptable.
What happens if the man steals some of the tax?
That's not a Shabbos issue. That's a business management issue. Okay, but now what he says is that what the non-Jew should do is he should take the profit of Shabbat for himself. In other words, the fact that now Jared's really getting money on Shabbos, is fine. He's saying to the non-Jew, he said the non-Jew's collecting 5,000 rand in tax money over Shabbat. Non-Jew himself would earn 500 rand, and Jared would earn 500 rand. That's the way it would normally work. For Shabbos, he says to him, you get the full 1,000 rand. Jared can't get that 500 rand from Shabbat, because otherwise he is getting this schar Shabbat. He's getting that income from Shabbat. Good. Chapter 245. Now is the question of a Jew and non-Jew who are operating in partnership. Now there's a good way to do this, there's a bad way to do this, and there's a way that we're not sure. So what's the good way to do it? Let's start with the bad way, because that's more clear. The bad way to do it, so Chris and I go into business together. We have got a shop. We've got a shop. In which the shop we sell?
Sweets. Sweets.
Lingerie.
Sweets. Let's start with sweets, thanks. We sell sweets. So we sell sweets in the shop, and you always need at least one of us in the shop. So we buy this together and we work it out and everything, and we're going with this shop on Shabbos. So far, everything seems fine. Then Friday afternoon arrives. I say, "Oh, Chris, I can't come in tomorrow." So he says, "It's fine. I'll work tomorrow. You work Sunday." I said, "Great." No good. That is a seriously problematic situation. What would be so bad about it? Exactly.
What?
We're trading. I am hiring him to work for me on Shabbat, and in exchange, he's hiring me to work for him on Sunday. That's going to be an issue. So
What's the malacha of trading?
So it's d'Rabbanan.
Oh.
It's d'Rabbanan, but it's still forbidden. There are all kinds of things. The Mishna later on, he goes into saying, even though trading is d'Rabbanan, there's so many d'oraitas that are so easily involved. You write down the orders, you cut the fabric, it goes through a whole list of things that, and he says, our sages really helped us when they prohibited trading on Shabbat. But that's what you find in the book of Ezra. When Ezra and Nehemiah arrive in Jerusalem, and they see what is the day of the Shuk? Shabbos. And they say, but you're allowed to buy and sell on Shabbat. What's the problem? That's where they made a prohibition of commerce on Shabbat. So that's a problem. We go into this business without having structured a Shabbat agreement. Then even though I'm not working on Shabbat, that's forbidden. Because he's working for me on Shabbat because we're partners in the business. So the correct way to do it is to say like this. Let's split up. When we first go into business, let's make it the terms of the business. That on Shabbat, I have no responsibility. On Shabbat, it's your shop. On Sunday, you have no responsibility. It's my shop. And it's not a question then when Shabbos comes that he's working for me. On Shabbos, I was never responsible in the first place. So that initial formulation of the contract is crucial over here. Because that's going to depend either that I've got nothing to do with Shabbos, he can do it every once, or it's my responsibility on Shabbos and he's working for me. Once you've made the wrong decision, the only way out is to reformulate the whole partnership. In fact, Shulchan Aruch says, like with a field, you sell the field and buy it back again, and then make the new agreement.
Can you also do that with the house that was built on Shabbos?
That's Aaron's question.
Yeah,
don't know.
Can you demolish it? That can break.
Demolish a house? Sure. I mean, it's an expensive exercise. It's probably cheaper to sell it and build somewhere else.
What about if the roof was just built on Shabbos?
No, remember we're going further. So you've made this partnership, and you made it the wrong way, where you didn't stipulate that I have no responsibility towards this on Shabbos. So again, this is really a problem. Even if you want to say to him, well, listen, you get all the money from Shabbos and I don't, whatever. The very fact that he's working on Shabbos is going to be an issue. Now, the next one is, so let's talk about doing it the right way. The right way is we make this deal, we make this stipulation, and what do we say is, whatever is earned on Shabbat is yours. Whatever is earned on Sunday is mine, and the other 5 days a week we'll split 50-50. That's also a good way to do it. But what happens if at the time when the month end comes, I say to him, we agreed that you would have Shabbat, we agreed that I would have Sunday, but let's just split the money 50-50, the whole income from the whole month. Let's not look at what you did on Shabbos, what I did on Sunday. Let's just split all the income. Let's speak in a case where it would be easy to see what was what. Now, what do we say about that? Splitting the income 50-50, does that mean that our deal was just a legal fiction? Really, it is my responsibility on Shabbat, because at the end of the day, the way that we're structuring the finances looks like I'm getting the money for Shabbat? Or do we say, no, it's true. I have no responsibility on Shabbat. He has no responsibility on Sunday. But it's just easier at the end of the day to split the money 50-50. And we both feel that that's fair. This is a machloket. It's a machloket between the Rambam and the Rosh. The Rambam says it's forbidden to split the money 50-50. The Rosh says it's permitted to split the money 50-50. The Shulchan Aruch follows the Rambam, who says it's forbidden. And the Ramor says there are. Wait, this is Avaim. I beg your pardon. Let me start this again. If we did it originally with the deal, then that would be fine. But if we did it without the deal, and now we want to split it up 50-50, so the Rambam says it's no good, and the Rosh says it's okay, and the Shulchan Aruch says, you're not allowed to take that money 50-50. The Ramor says, in a case where you would lose a lot of money, otherwise you can actually keep it. You can rely on the Rosh in a case you're going to. But the case that I originally mentioned, so let me just go back to it again, where we said we'll do that you are fully responsible for Saturday, I'm fully responsible for Sunday. If at the end we decide it's too much trouble to work out all the profits and we'll split it 50-50, everyone agrees that that's okay.
But the Ramah's actually saying that you're earning more on Shabbos than on Sunday. Otherwise, it wouldn't be losing a lot of money.
Yes, correct.
So
Correct. Good point. Why doesn't it make sense?
Because now you're earning on Shabbos.
The reason you're losing a lot of money is because you were working on Shabbos.
But maybe it's like this. Maybe if we didn't take it, I would have to give up the whole Shabbos earnings. And so I would end up getting, 40% of all the profits and you get 60%. I wouldn't.
Well, that's the deal. I mean, that's...
Yeah. So at the end of the day, you're taking the Shabbos money. Yeah, I guess you could look into the Gemara to find the details more. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. Sam?
What happens if he closes the shop on Sunday and then he says, in a way, at the start of the deal, they said, your responsibility is Saturday and mine is Sunday, and he closes on Sunday for the 1 week, so he loses that amount of money, and then can he say at the end, let's just split it 50-50?
Well, you can say it, but the partner would be foolish to accept it. I don't think he could impose that restriction upon his partner. Yeah. Now, not everybody is so happy with the idea of saying let's just split it 50-50. But when it comes to a case where it's very difficult to see exactly how much money was made on each day, and he says like a shop. See, when it comes to a shop, now today we could say that we know, right? But in those days, you only really work out your profit and loss and whatever when you do a stock take. You do a stock take and you bring in the new order and this and that, whatever else. You can't always break it down day by day. So he says if it's that kind of situation where we're not going to be breaking it down day by day, then definitely you can agree on this 50-50 story. But the main case over here is that the difference between the completely permitted case and the completely forbidden case is not anything that's done, but it's the structure of the agreement. That's what really makes the big deal over here. Because is he working for me? Is he doing me a favor and working on my behalf? Or is it his responsibility and not my responsibility? Okay, we mentioned if you made the problem, the only way to fix that up basically is by resetting the whole partnership. And the other option is that he says, the other option, if you didn't want to reset the partnership, so now we found ourselves in this problematic way, what I could say to him is, I'll sell you my share of the business over Shabbat, right? Or I will sell you the ownership of this shop over Shabbat. Now that's really the agreement. I think that's done very commonly today. That basically the idea is, so if I own a shop by myself. Now you'll find some places like at the waterfront. If you own a shop at the waterfront, you've got to be open 7 days a week.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm a Shomer Shabbos guy. I want to own this. I want to buy and run this shop myself. And I say to them, but I've got to be closed on Shabbos. I'm Shomer Shabbos. They say, then you can't open in the center. So generally the idea that we'll have is I'll bring in a partner and I'll say to him, I'll sell you the shop over Shabbos.
You're making money on Shabbos.
So I sell him the shop for 10,000 Rand. And whatever profits and losses, so he gets the profits or he suffers the losses. But I'm selling him that part of the business.
And you've got the same problem as the bathhouse, and that's called third goods t-shirts.
Yeah, so that's you've got to deal with. That problem of Marit Ayin. The problem of Schar Shabbat you've got to deal with as well. So if it's a schirut, is it really, because I've now rented it to me. Am I really earning money over Shabbos? I'm not sure that I am. And then the other way would be to make it into a partnership. But where it's a similar kind of thing. So it's either that he's renting the business from me over Shabbat, or he owns a percentage of the business, and his day is Shabbat, and my days are the 6 days of the week. But that's the kind of structure that it's going to be. Yeah?
So how come that's okay for a shop and not for a bakery or deli or that concept?
Everyone knows
Because the
that.
Bethin's very strict that you can't get it.
Because
But
obviously,
based on that, you should be able to argue for that.
So the problem with food is a different problem. What's the problem with food?
kosher.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't make anything in Shabbos. You're just selling what's on the shelves.
Just selling it from the shelves. So in other words, there's no cooking or whatever. It's not. So then you're not talking about a
restaurant.
Not talking about a restaurant.
Like a store.
You're talking about a place that sells ready-made food.
Yeah.
Place that sells ready-made food.
Like a garage.
That they have, non-Jews operating it over Shabbat. I don't know that it wouldn't get a hesher.
Okay. Look at
The problem is that
Come with me to
problem is
Bethany
that they're
McCann.
cooking. The
You
problem
go
is they're
buy-
cooking the food.
You get like a checkered, all the things are closed, but the bakery, the kosher bakery, but it's operating 7 days a week on Shabbat and everything.
The kosher bakery.
Yeah.
Is it?
That's not cooking, it's not baking.
No.
Oh, so there you go. It's not cooking
Yeah,
or
but I mean,
baking.
they're
Or just
selling
sitting.
food like.
So there you go. That's the case. So if you're not cooking about it, they close the ovens and take away the keys or whatever, then that's fine. So there is some discussion around this, around this point of renting out the business and so forth. The Magen Avraham wants to. The Magen Avraham and the Taz both find this very difficult. The Mishnah Brura goes into this. Is this permitted in the first account, or only if there's a big loss, like we saw earlier? And the Mishnah Brura goes into that. Okay. The next question is: can you lend money to a non-Jew, knowing that he will use this to do business on Shabbat?
yes, it's your business. It's money
Yes, you can. Yeah, because that's even though he's going to be doing that, and you can even take part of the profits because it's not my business; it's his business. I'm allowed to be, in other words, like an investor in his business, and nobody can see that it's my money. I'm investing in his business. He's doing whatever he wants with his business, and it doesn't say Thurgood on the shop. So
It's like buying shares in a
So I was
company.
doing something on ethical consumption, and the DATS has said that people say, issued a letter saying that you can't buy shares in companies that operate on Shabbat.
can't buy. That's interesting.
But I'll send it to you.
Yeah, see,
So
that might
you
be
can
when it
see
comes to like public companies, it's always more complicated because you can assume that there are Jews involved.
Yeah.
So this would be more like a private arrangement where
Yeah.
that you're lending him the capital to start the business or whatever else. Yeah. See, buying a share also means you own it. That's the difference. Buying a share means you own it. Here you're lending him money.
Then he's gonna have to pay you back.
Yeah, and
And you can get some of the profits.
yes, you're lending him money in exchange for a share of the profits, but it's his business. In other words, those are the terms of repayment, but I don't own the business.
Okay.
What about public sponsorship of an event
It's on Shabbos.
that on Shabbos?
So what's the issue?
So you're investing in this event to
Yes,
make money.
it's a race.
Yes,
No
but you
investing.
stand to make money out of it.
How?
I don't know.
You're putting your brand out there. It's marketing. Is that what you're saying?
No, maybe you're putting in the capital to make the race, but there's an entrance fee that you can
Okay.
make back.
Yes.
But it's public marketing. I'm saying the public aspect of it wouldn't be allowed.
Well, I mean, the whole thing sounds problematic. It sounds like you're running a business on Shabbos.
So then what's the difference between that and investing in someone? I'm saying the only difference is that it's...
So Chris says to me, I want to make latkes. I want to fry latkes and sell latkes 7 days a week. But I need R1 million to run the business. I say, Chris, here's the deal. I lend you the R1 million and you give me half the profits of your latka business. So that's different. It says that's his latka business. No, it's not shares. It's not shares. It's not shares. That's the terms of repayment of the loan. I don't own his latka business.
And if there's a 3-day event...
He still needs, even if he goes totally bankrupt and the latkas don't take off, he still needs to pay me back my R1 million. But the interest that he's paying me is not defined by 5% a month. It's defined by half the profits of his latka business. So I am, in a sense, gambling on how well he's going to do, but I don't own a share of the business. So that says the Shulchan Aruch, that's fine. Okay. And you're allowed, now the other way around as well, you're allowed to, now somebody asked about this earlier, I'm allowed to give him, I think this was your question, I'm allowed to give him merchandise that he's going to sell for commission. So he's the traveling salesman, and I'm going to give him all the stuff that he's going to go out and sell, and
Even if he's giving it out for free just to market your product.
and he's going to get, well, that we could maybe look at, but here what he's doing is, he's going to get a set amount for everything that he sells. For every set of encyclopedias that he sells, he gets 100 rand. So I can't say to him, go and sell it on Shabbat. But he chooses his days and his hours, and he ends up selling it on Shabbat. That's not going to be a problem. Good. Okay, now in chapter 246, he goes into the idea that we mentioned of Shvitat Kalim, having your utensils doing work on Shabbat. So you're allowed to rent out your utensils, like the example that we mentioned with the car, because that's not prohibited. However, some are not so. There we go. But there's the issue of lending them out erev Shabbat, because now it turns out to be schar Shabbat. So they say you must make sure that whatever you earn from Shabbat will be behavla'a, as we mentioned, will be absorbed within other income. For example, you're renting it out for a month, you're renting it out for a week. But as I said, you can even make it like a fairly almost arbitrary things. I remember looking once in a tshuva of Rabbi Shlomo Kluger that he says you're having non-Jews coming into your hotel on Shabbos. They come in on Friday night after Shabbos has started. They left Shabbat day after Shabbat is finished. And now you want to charge them for rent, right? Right? So he says, so you charge them the cleaning fee. And the whole, and for the straw that their oxes used or whatever. Now the whole room is probably 10 times the price of what they are, but that's how you make it work. So there's no sense of proportionality here. Okay, the next one is you're not allowed to lend something to a non-Jew from your home as it's coming into Shabbat, where he's going to be carrying it out on Shabbat. Again, the example would be that I've got my car, and everyone knows what my car looks like, and I give him the keys, erev Shabbat, as it's like 2 minutes before candle lighting, and he takes it and he drives out whilst it's now dark. So that looks bad. That looks like I'm telling him to go in my car. So there we're back to the story of Marit Ayin. Are you allowed to rent out your animal to the non-Jew? No, why not? Your animal's not allowed to work. Now, what Shulchan Aruch does go into, firstly he says, what if you rent him out for a week, and then he promises you that he won't make the animal work on Shabbat? That's right, Theo. So the next one is, if you get him back Erev Shabbat and give him back again Saturday night, that's fine. If you put the animal under lock and key, that's okay. But if you're just relying on his word that he's not going to work the animal on Shabbat, you can't trust him on that. And then the Shulchan Aruch goes into what happens if he says, well, I'm not giving him back. I'm not giving him back. So you've got three solutions. So one solution is that you mafkir the animal, you declare it ownerless. Now you can either just do that by yourself, I no longer own this animal, or you even get three people together and you declare together that I no longer own this animal. However, the Shulchan Aruch says, the Ramah says, but this doesn't mean that anyone else can go and take the animal. This is an interesting thing. It's like a kind of conditional declaration of hefker. Because he says everyone understands that you're only saying it in order that you don't end up with the animal working, but nobody else is allowed to take it. So you have to look into the exact structure, the financial structure of that kind of conditional hefker. Or the third one is to say, I give it as a gift to the person who isn't Jewish, so that you don't end up having your animal worked. Again, probably you can claim it back afterwards. I haven't seen the Mishna Brura on that yet. The last point for us for tonight is that there are ways to structure it that renting it is really like selling it. So if he's rented it and he's accepted all the insurance and all the liability for it and all those kinds of things, we can have a situation where it's considered like it belongs to him. And in that case, then I wouldn't violate it. So it's almost like if I would sell it to him Erev Shabbos, right? So then then I'm out of the situation because it's not my animal that's working anymore. Now, I don't know if he proposes that as the ideal situation, but he's put it forward as a case where you're actually not able to get the animal back. So again, whether you could do that lechatchila, not sure, you'd have to look into it. But there are such cases where when he's accepted for liability and whatever else, that it's considered as if he has taken ownership of the animal. And then the last one, chapter 247. We started at 6:35, so we'll go to 7:35. It's 7:36. We'll just go for one more minute. The chapter 247 that about letters. So he speaks about sending letters on Shabbos, and the basic rule here is similar to what we've seen before. If the person who's not Jewish is taking the letters for you, then it's going to be problematic. If they're doing it for themselves, then that's going to be okay. So if we've set the fee and everything before Shabbos and he's going to just take it for himself, and he could take it any time and he's taking it on Shabbos, that's going to be fine. But if he's doing it as a favor for me, then that is more problematic because then he's doing it for me. So that's what you've got to look at it as well. And it really is an application of these principles that we've already seen. Now what if he's already going somewhere and you just want to give him a letter to take with? Then that's going to be fine because he's not doing anything extra. Okay, and so it goes into more details around sending the letter on Shabbat. But again, it's based on the principles that we've covered. So hopefully that'll be sufficient for now. We'll leave it there.
Okay, guys, a big thank you to